had an experience this past Wednesday during my Empire of the Ghouls 5th edition game that I wanted to talk about and share some experiences about a thing that happened and how it played out, and then looking at it and how I wish it had played out. So for a brief summary of what occurred, the characters were traveling along on a big sand barge going across a desert, a big sand ship sailing across the desert in the Southlands in Midgard, and they saw a big meteor shower coming down. And one of these meteors struck down over the horizon, a big green meteor struck down over the horizon, and it kind of exploded outwards. And the captain of the ship is like, strange meteors from other worlds often mean strange metals or strange new things that could be very exciting, could be really interesting. The characters are like, yeah. And so they got on a little sand skiff and they sailed on their sand skiff out to the crater. And they got out of the sand skiff and they went up the edge of the crater and they look and they saw this like green smoke swirling around at the bottom and smoke coming out, this greenish smoke coming out of the thing. And they're like, let's go down there and get some of that crazy metal. And they started making their way down there when like gossamer wings kind of rose out and this insectoid-faced creature with tentacles on the bottom of its body writhing around, and these weird gossamer wings that didn't appear like it could possibly keep this hulking creature aloft seemed to rise out, and they heard this sound and they saw terrible things in their vision, and they said, let's kick its ass. So they attacked it, and then it started blasting them. They were 7th level. The characters are 8th level, and they're getting slammed for 36 points of damage. Multiple targets getting hit for 36 damage, including one target getting hit with a disintegration gaze that they made their saving throw on, so they took no damage. But they were really, they're like, oh. And after that first volley of hits, and then they attacked it, and a bunch of people missed, and it's flying in the air, so all the melee attackers are like, well, we can't do anything. And they hit it with like a fire ray, and it resisted fire. It actually was immune to fire. I screwed up, but it resisted fire. So they did 4 damage on round 1, and it did 72 points of damage and even missed one of its attacks and 4 damage in return. And I said to them, you stare at this thing and you really wonder if this could be the end of you. Like this is you have never seen a creature like this before. And half the players are like, why are we even here? Like we came for some green metal down there. We don't even know that there is anything down there. And now there's this thing, and it just hit me for 36 damage. That's 2/3 of my hit points. One more hit and I'm down. And by the way, Durham over there almost got disintegrated with a gaze attack. Maybe we should run. So half the group is like ready to run. And then the other half is like, I don't want to run. I hate running, but I'm not going to stay here and die. So they all ran, and they ran over the crater. They go back. The sand skiff guy is like, hey, how'd it go? And they're like, yeah, not great. Turn that thing around. We got to go. And so and a lot of them are like, what is this thing? We just released this horror in the desert, and now it's going to be out here, and somebody else could run into it. We need to stop it. And then the guy who's like native to it is like, there's all kinds of horrible crap out here in this desert. It's a terrible desert. Anyway, like lots of things will kill you. So no, it'll be fine. Like it's not any worse than half of the other things in the desert. So they got back on their sand skiff and they sailed back, and the captain's like, how'd it go? And like, yeah, not great. Let's just keep going. And they went. But what was interesting about it was how the players felt about it. And one of the interesting things is that it was a really big downward beat. Like players hate running from stuff. They just hate running from a battle. First of all, 5th edition D&D is not great at offering opportunities for characters to run because you have like the stickiness of opportunity attacks, or by the time you think you need to run, one of the characters is already down. There's just not a good way to kind of get your way out of the battle, just mechanically speaking. You're kind of stuck in it. You're right there. You're not going to be able to run far enough to not get hit by the next set of disintegration rays. So people are like, well, we're here now. We have to do it. So once you're in combat, it's really hard to leave combat and run in the first place. So already you have this mechanical problem. But then the other problem that you run into is that like players don't want to run. Like 5th edition D&D is a heroic fantasy RPG. It is not the sort of grimdark RPG where 95% of the creatures that you face could kill you. Most of the time you're facing creatures that you're going to be okay against, or you're going to defeat pretty easily. Only occasionally you're going to fight creatures that are really dangerous. And most of the time those are boss fights where you know way ahead of time, oh my God, we're going to go face this lich. It's going to be really tough, but let's prepare ourselves and we'll go in and face this lich. And the DM also knows like, hey, we can change the dials a little bit to give you a good feeling that the battle is really hard and really interesting, but we know that the characters will probably persevere if they fight well. So it's really hard to give that impression. But every so often you want to put something in there that's like, hey, the world is really dangerous. If a meteor comes down and crashes down from other worlds, other plains, and out of it comes a star spawn of Cthulhu, which, by the way, was the creature. We can take a look at it. So we want to have it where if a meteor crashes down and it breaks open and a star spawn of Cthulhu comes floating out of this thing, that the world isn't conforming itself to the level of the characters. The whole world, as they're exploring it, yeah, they go to some dangerous places, but every so often they go into the deep desert and they face something that's even far more powerful than they are, far more dangerous than they are. And you want to give that sense of reality to the world, that the world can be really dangerous. Likewise, you also want to give them the opportunity to run into people who are way weaker than them. They get attacked by 3 bandits, and the bandits are like, we're totally going to take you for all your gold. And you're like, you're bandits. We could kill you with one spell. And they're like, nah, we got bows. We're going to shoot you with a bow unless you give us your gold. And you're like, scorching ray, and all 3 of them go down. You want to give them that impression that also the opposite is true. Where once the characters reach a certain level, most of the stuff in the world is a lot weaker than they are. But you still every so often want these star spawns of Cthulhu. The one thing I wish I had done differently, this is the one tip, if you're going to get one thing out of this video, one thing that I really think is valuable from this, when you as a GM know that the kind of creature they're going to face is going to be really hard, project it even before they go into combat with it. The one thing I wish I had done here is I wish that I had the star spawn of Cthulhu rise out of the crater when they were rolling up, so that when they were coming out, they would see it right away and they would know. And then I could explain to them, this is a creature far beyond anything you've ever faced before. It could be really dangerous. And now they have the opportunity to not just run away, but just disengage. Just, you know what? Whatever strange metal is in that crater, not worthwhile. We're going to go. I wish I had projected it sooner. Now, part of that was I didn't even realize how dangerous this creature is. I knew, obviously it's a CR 15, but the characters are level 8. And there's 5 level 8 characters. CR 15 is not that bad. Now, the lazy encounter benchmark and using Paul Hughes's benchmark from the Monstrous Menagerie, which is a fantastic easy benchmark, which is a creature may be deadly if its challenge rate, a single creature might be deadly for a group if its challenge rating is greater than 150% of the character levels. So in this case, 150% of CR8s is 12. 15 is definitely higher than 12. So this is definitely on the outer edge. But also, it's a Kobold Press monster. And Kobold Press monsters they hit really hard for their challenge rating already. They have sharp little teeth, or in this case, disintegrating eye rays. So it is already a really dangerous creature. So I wish that I had projected that before they had engaged with it. The interesting thing was, now it has a charisma saving throw of +6, but a single banish could take this thing out, right? So they could have, with the right landing of the right spell, they could have been victorious, but it was kind of bad luck. They were like, well, we're not sure how tough this thing is. And then they're starting to get they're just nailing them when it's nailing them with these 32-point void bolts, right? Multiple 32-point void bolts. That's really tough. Now, granted, the disintegrating gaze, it can only do once, so that's not a really big deal. But it was a really dangerous monster, and they ended up saying, yeah, we got to run. But it felt bad, and it felt bad because they had to disengage from the battle. The one thing I wish I had done differently is reveal the monster a little bit earlier so that they would have that option to recognize how dangerous this thing was before they started getting attacked. Now, one thing that I did that I actually liked that helped with the flavor of the whole thing is it didn't chase them when they ran. That once they disengaged and started moving away, I had it use this telepathic scream, and they got to see the world where the star spawn came from, this twisted world where the souls of mortals are being led up to a giant machine, and there's these huge star spawns that are all around, sending these screaming entities into the minds or into the machinations of some kind of otherworldly horrible machine. I really like that they saw that, and then I hit them with stress effects from the Lazy DM's Companion. They all had to make saving throws. Some of them had blood coming out of their eyes. Some of them heard the sound of screaming children, but I didn't have it paralyze them. I just had them say they saw all this stuff, and then they ran and got in the skiff and GTFO'd. They left. So it worked out okay. And then I put some good upward beats. I had some situations that I knew they would have some agency in to discount the fact that they just had this situation where they didn't. They're definitely going to remember the star spawn of Cthulhu, but it was not something I would say was enjoyable to the players at the moment. And so that is really the key about this idea of throwing monsters that are more powerful than the characters are. Even if it makes sense for the situation, it is going to be a big downward beat. You're going to want to make sure to find good ways to put upward beats. And if you can, project it early. Those would be my biggest tips. So that was an experience that I wanted to share. I hope that is useful to you. If you enjoyed this and you want more tips for your RPGs, please consider subscribing to the Sly Flourish newsletter. You can find a link down in the show notes below. It's absolutely free to sign up. You get a weekly RPG-related email and a Lazy Adventure Generator PDF sent directly to you. You can also support me directly on Patreon. You get access to all kinds of great features, more tips like this, Uncovered Secrets Volume 1 and 2, City of Arches Sourcebook, Discord server, monthly Q&A, lots of great stuff for being a patron of Sly Flourish. Or you can pick up any of my books, including Return to the Lazy Dungeon Master, the Lazy DM's Workbook, and the Lazy DM's Companion, all in the Sly Flourish bookstore. Links to that in the show notes below. Thank you all very much. Have a great day, and get out there and play an RPG.